Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's call. I'm real excited about sharing this specific topic of overcoming discouragement. This is something that comes up sometimes multiple times on my coaching calls, but it certainly comes up with almost every client that I have, as we all experience setbacks and therefore sometimes become discouraged, obviously myself included. Again, hi, my name is Mike Thomas. I am a board certified health and wellness coach. I am board certified in lifestyle medicine. I'm a registered pharmacist. My website and my email address are on the screen. If you're watching this recording because you couldn't make the call online, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're seeing this on Facebook, feel free to give it a like. That is me this past weekend with my beautiful wife. I'm the one on the left, by the way. And that is in New Mexico. We were at a beautiful wedding this past weekend, celebrating Grace Ann's first cousin's daughter's wedding, which was awesome. Real quick disclaimer, let's get this out of the way. This information shared here is for education and information purposes only, and solely as a self-help tool for your own use. I'm not providing medical, psychological, or nutritional therapy advice. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your own medical practitioner. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and or mental health provider about your specific health situation. For my full disclaimer, please go to coachmikethomas.com. I'm excited to announce, some of this I've already shared with some of you, but I'm excited to announce that I have written a book. It is an ebook format now available online. It is 100% free. It has an introduction, it has an epilogue, it has 10 chapters, and it's really about having and establishing sustainable behavior, right? So we can make change, but we can only make change for a short period of time, most of us, most of the time. So if you look at the parking lots of your local gym, you'll see in the middle of January, they're looking pretty full. You'll see in the middle of March, they're looking a little thinner. And then when we get to probably October, November, there's probably plenty of places to park, because again, making that sustainable behavior stick or stay in place is very difficult to do. So what I've done is I've really worked to establish 10 basic principles to have that happen, where you can have sustainable behavior change. I'm excited to share with anybody on this call, anybody watching the video. The actual digital link for this will be available in the description of the YouTube video. And what I've taken is, as an almost 30 years of work as a coach, as a leader, and as a manager in corporate America, and then now almost 5 years as a coach, specifically through the health and wellness process. I have taken that experience, that knowledge, and the studying that I've done, and really worked to incorporate that into this book. So I'm very proud of this book, and I'm really excited about offering this. As a side, also, when you submit for the book itself, you'll be automatically subscribed to receive a few emails from me on a weekly basis. Those emails are primarily value-based, i.e. recipes, helpful hints, tips and tricks, kind of like a blog format as well. That's going to be on there. And if that's not something that you want to receive, you can unsubscribe and no longer receive those emails as well. So just know that that's forthcoming as well. And again, the link will be in the description of the YouTube video. All right, so let's get to our presentation. So overcoming discouragement. Again, the purpose of this presentation is to help you and provide you with tools to help you move faster through discouragement, help you to minimize discouragement, and help you to even potentially at times eliminate discouragement altogether, right? So with regards to change, there's two fundamental truths that I'd like to share with all of you on this call. The first one is that change is not an education or information problem. It's not like we're lacking in information and education to know what we should be doing, and that's called the knowing doing fallacy. Often what I hear on my coaching calls, and often I tell myself and express to other folks, I know what to do, but I don't always do what I know. So let's just understand that information education about plants can help us and keep us motivated, but that's not what's happening there is not necessarily a lack of creating the change in the process, lack of information. Number two, fundamental truth about change is we will not always feel like changing, right? Many times I'll get a brand new client, and the first 2, 3, 4 calls, so probably the first 3 to 6 weeks, they are fired up, right? Sometimes it's after a few calls, sometimes it's a little bit longer, but that sense of motivation isn't necessarily sustainable, and we can't really rely on motivation to help us through to have long-term sustainable change. So we need to put things into place where it helps us to supports us to continue to make change, or at least sustainable change. And if we can have that happen to where it establishes a habit as a habit, even that much more better, right? So we're not always going to feel like changing. And when I sometimes ask, oh, wow, I noticed that you didn't get that done like you said you wanted to, sometimes the response is, yeah, well, this week I didn't feel like it. And if we're going to rely on our emotions and when we feel like it to change, that's probably not going to last and be sustainable. So last month we talked about EPIG, which was embrace pain, enhance gain, right? And we talked about Gail, and a number of you folks either watched the video or on the call afterwards shared with me that really some of her challenges really resonated with you, right? And she would become discouraged as well as she was trying to make change. Gail's a 61-year-old person who she was trying to do some weight training, establish that as a habit. And as it turned out, she hadn't done that in over 40 years. So her brain, her body, her nerves really weren't up to the task, at least initially. She was lacking in confidence because she started lifting weights several times in the last few years, but then wasn't able to make that something that lasted for her. It wasn't sustainable. She didn't really even like weight training. Again, I didn't feel like it. I don't like it. So she was going through the discouragement process with that as well. And then she found other things that she could do with her time that she would probably enjoy better. So her daughter had just had a baby, and she would really much rather be with her granddaughter instead. If I can get everybody to mute your phones, I'm hearing some background noise. I'd really appreciate that. So why overcome discouragement? So we want to change, and that is the goal. If you are discouraged, which again is very human and very normal, when you're feeling bad, it's that much more difficult to change. So it's literally ABC. We want to change, but then we feel bad about some of the decisions that we make. And that feeling bad or feeling discouraged makes it that much more difficult and that much more slowly to change, which is ultimately the goal. So we change quicker and we change more readily when we feel good and not bad. Just think about that as a general principle, if you could. Do something here. Write that there. All right. So we falter, we have setbacks. We are human and we will have setbacks, right? Nobody is perfect. And the number one thing that causes the discouragement is actually not the setback. It is our perception or what we think about the setback, right? So if you think about two people that go through the same challenge and they both have the same setback, both people can have exactly 180-degree difference of what that perception of that setback is, and their ability to move forward because of that perception is where the challenge lies. That's the crux of it, right? So if you just think about it, it's not necessarily the setback, it's the perception or what we think about the setback. So it's our thoughts, it's our mind. And that's a lot about what this presentation is about. The mind is a very powerful tool that we can use to help us. If we aren't intentional with our thoughts or our mind, we will often struggle to make progress on change. Again, that is the goal. Many times we'll even go in the opposite direction of our goals and our vision of wellness. Work to control your mind just a little bit better. This isn't about going 180 degrees in the opposite direction. We can literally put ourselves in a positive mood or a negative mood just by what we decide to think about, right? So we don't have enough time today on this call, but I want everybody on the call or anybody watching online to think about going through the experience of sitting down for 5 minutes and thinking about something in your past that brought you tremendous joy. Perhaps it was a daughter or a son that graduated from high school or college, something that was just so joyful. It could have been a wedding, right? If you just think about that occasion and you think about it some more, and a couple minutes later you think about it some more, that can literally begin to elevate your mood, sometimes within seconds, but definitely within minutes. Again, we're not going to go through this exercise, but you can do just the opposite, right? And many of us, many times, without us really even thinking about it, are thinking about things in the past that have bothered us or have brought us anxiety, have frustrated us, have really brought us down. And sure enough, that really affects our mood or our mindset, right? 3 of the principles that I really try to focus on when I'm coaching is the mindset, menu, and movement principle. And of course, the menu principle, primarily eating plants to the best of our ability, and movement's incredibly important as well. But if you don't have the mindset right, it's really difficult to affect and to change the movement. So a lot of times I talk about what's going on between the ears first and foremost. So here's Gail again. She's 61 years old. The title of this slide is How Old Are You? So think about your own age. And it's hard. This is how we evolved as human beings. This is how we evolved as people. In our age and in our adulthood, some of our thought patterns have been going on for many, many years and sometimes many decades. What we're talking about is doing a little shift, a rewiring of the brain, which takes time, energy, and intention, right? It is worth it. And again, Gail does not have to change 180 degrees, and neither do you. This is just about a shift. So examples of setbacks and then discouragement. We have the setback, and then potentially we feel discouraged. So here's one. You went to a local fair and ate healthy, but then you got a funnel cake. And even though you said you were going to eat healthy, you ate it instead. You ate unhealthy, and then you feel bad both physically and mentally, right? And these are pretty minor examples, but I want you to just kind of get the idea and thoughts of what I'm thinking about when I talk about some setbacks. Here's another setback, and then discouragement. Even though you said, this is the day that I'll get started and get my workout in, you did not do your workout and just mindlessly scrolled on social media for several hours, and therefore you ran out of time, right? So I think we probably have a good idea of what those mean. One of those is going to come up in a couple of slides. So the 7 ways to minimize discouragement and make progress on change. So the first way I want you guys to think about is to watch your language, right? Think about the words that you say in your mind, and think about the words that you say out loud, right? So to say the words, I'm a failure, your identity can be extremely powerful, versus the words, I sometimes experience failure or setbacks, which is basically all of us. We all experience setbacks or failures from time to time. If you say that in your head, I'm a failure, or even more powerfully, there's actually data that shows when you actually say those words, I'm a failure, it's even that much more compelling and that much more impactful on your level of discouragement and therefore lack of progress moving forward. So that's number 1. Another one with watch your language is, I can't do it. This is who I am. I'm just lazy, right? Just giving yourself the identity of I'm a lazy person, versus I haven't been able to do it yet. And that subtle shift in being intentional and recognizing how that can affect you with your discouragement, your motivation, and just moving forward. Okay. Number 2, reframe the setback. So you experience that setback. For example, let's say you had a funnel cake or what have you. How can we normalize that? How can we recognize that we're going to have setbacks in our process of making change? Many times on my initial, probably first and second, and sometimes depending on where the individual is that I'm coaching, I'm constantly normalizing the fact that they're having a setback. That individual that has that setback often thinks about the fact that they think that they can't do it, and they're the only one that they're going through this discouragement with, and they're having this setback, etc. And the reality is, a lot of times when you're making changes, those changes happen over the course of time, and there's a lot of wins, and there's also a lot of setbacks when the change happens. The other thing to do besides normalizing is to ask yourself two questions. What can I learn from this setback? Right? And the other one is, what is something good that can come out of this? And sometimes you got to dig a little deeper, but often, almost all the time, there's at least something good that can come out of that actual setback, right? So with number two, in reframing the setback, normalizing, how can we learn from this and what's good that can come out of this? I'd like to ask you guys, you experienced this, you went to the local fair and ate healthy, but then you got a funnel cake, even though you said you were going to eat healthy. You ate unhealthily, then you feel bad both physically and mentally, right? So you feel bad. So what are ways that we can reframe that setback and help us moving forward? What makes sense to you guys? How can we normalize that?
Well, I think if you just first of all accept the physical that's actually, I think, a positive thing, or it can be.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're totally breaking
Can you hear
up.
me?
No, you're totally breaking up. We really, it's hard to hear what you're saying. I apologize.
Can you hear
Yeah, you're breaking up. It's very choppy. It's very hard to hear what you're saying.
Could you repeat the question again? I'm trying to
Absolutely.
decide if you mean to reframe as in how you would do it differently or how you would make yourself feel like I can't be discouraged.
Right. So if this scenario, and everybody I think understands the scenario, you go to the fair and you have
Okay.
something unhealthy and you feel bad physically and mentally. What is a way that you can reframe it to say what you experience is actually normal? What is something you can tell yourself to say this was normal? What is something you can ask of yourself to say, well, what can I learn from this experience? And what is something you can say, well, what good could possibly come out of this? Right. So answering those three questions, what would those answers be?
It would be hard for me not to do it. Just honestly, I feel like if I'm going to put myself at a fair, I'm going to have something. So I think I would more likely say, if I'm going to go, then I have to eat healthy and have one thing, which might be my funnel cake. And if
Yeah.
that's it, then I have to actually split it with somebody else. So I wasn't eating the whole thing.
Good for you. Yeah. So kind of having a boundary where you know kind of where you're going to be in alignment with what your expectation is, knowing that being around that type of food is and not having something would be extremely difficult, which kind of normalize it. And I think probably most people would feel that way as well. Absolutely.
Can you hear me now?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can hear you.
I think actually allowing yourself to feel the discomfort physically,
Okay.
but not letting yourself mentally be beat up about it, but allow yourself to feel it, because that's pretty powerful, or it can be,
Okay.
to remind yourself why, one of the reasons you don't want to do this.
Yeah. Reinforcing that feedback, right? Physicality, but just kind of sitting in that, but not going there mentally. What's something good that could come out of this situation? What do you think?
You can think about what this does now, but what you can do if you want to in the future.
Yeah.
You can just kind of work through it a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Use it as an opportunity to step up to that and say, hey, this is a way that I could potentially get better with overcoming and reframing setbacks. Exactly. Just use it as a challenge to say, hey, this is a setback. It's time for me to step up. How can I do this and just leverage this opportunity to do that? Anything else come to mind?
I was just gonna kind of say the same thing that was said before. It's like similar, like just knowing that when you're put in that environment, you probably want to have some sort of sweet treat, but maybe in the future, knowing for yourself that you have to kind of plan it out, like know
Yeah.
exactly what you're going to get rather than just getting there and then indulging in whatever you see. Like, okay, I'm going to split it with this person, or I'm going to go get one ice cream cone or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. There's one thing, I just looking at the scenario here, something positive that can come out of this is we're not going to discount the fact that we had a funnel cake, but we're also going to be happy that we actually ate some healthy food at the fair, right? So accentuating the positive and saying, you know what, I didn't eat completely terribly at night. That night I went to the fair, I actually had several healthy items, but then at the end I did get a funnel cake, right? So looking at the glass half full and being positive in that process. Very cool. So number 3 is to break down the goals into tiny steps. And sometimes this happens with clients that I'm working with where that goal that they have established for themselves looks like, at least initially, possibly maybe it's a little bit large, and how can we break this down into smaller steps, right? Something that's easier to do, that's something that helps to build confidence. And quite frankly, that confidence can help to create momentum, right? So number 3, if there's a goal that you're having and you're discouraged because you're not hitting that goal, is to break it down into smaller steps where it's all about progress. It's not about perfection. And the expectation, again, normalizing it, is that there's going to be setbacks along the way. So how can we really break this down to something where it's from very, very small, easier to accomplish, and then start to begin to build confidence in that process? Number 4 is what you're going to focus on, right? When you have that discouragement, sometimes a lot of you share with me, well, I focus on reading my vision statement once a day, or I know it's time to go to my vision statement because it's been a few days and I stumbled through such and such setback. So what brings you joy, where your aspiration is, what are you focusing on, right? Something else that could potentially even be that much stronger is who outside of yourself can benefit from your being physically, mentally, and spiritually healthier, right? A lot of times we do it for our kids, or we do it for our siblings, or we do it for our parents. Sometimes that could be a huge lever. Obviously, ourselves are important and self-care is incredibly important, but motivation-wise and to buoy us through that discouragement, thinking about beyond yourself and what you can do to be an example for others could potentially help you and support you, and then focusing on that why. Number 5, establish and leverage a good support system, right? So this one sounds pretty self-explanatory, but I got a caveat that I want to share with you that I read about a couple of months ago that I think it's really important to understand this. And this is what it kind of, when we get to friendships and things like that, which are incredibly important. You guys know how I really emphasize what we're doing in our lives to have that as social support in our lives. But it's important to be careful when it comes to trying to get over this challenge or this problem with those that we share it with about, okay? Ruminating on the problem over and over again can actually make us feel bad, not good. It feels good to share it, but when we're done sharing, if we have no platform to move forward, there's actually studies that show this, we actually are in a worse place emotionally. Again, the whole goal is to feel better and to start moving forward. So give yourself an appropriate time to grieve or whine through your setbacks. And some of this is very minor and some of it potentially is major. Then focus on moving forward. A friend or a coach should support you with a kind ear, but also with the intention of helping you move forward. And not so great when it's time to pile on and add gasoline to that fire of your emotion and how you're not feeling good. So just kind of be thinking about that. This may be something that could be difficult sometimes to navigate through, but I wanted to share with you that before I studied this a couple of months ago, I thought, yeah, you really want to have that person that really listens to you, which is, of course, very, very important. But after, again, what's that time period? It's up to you, of course. Where are you going to do to move forward? How are you going to get over this? How are you going to get past this? What's your next step versus wallowing and focusing on the negativity? So just thinking about and leveraging your own good support systems. Number 6, reinforce and celebrate wins. So even small wins, it does not have to be this big parade. But what you can do, again, just like with the person that, went to the fair and had some healthy stuff to eat, and then of course had the funnel cake, what can we do to emphasize that, hey, you know what, I had some healthy food at the fair? At a minimum, take time to acknowledge it or even jot stuff down, right? What can we do to say, hey, this is what I did? And in the scheme of things, being positive to move forward and celebrating that versus being negative and focusing on what we didn't do. So many times somebody will start their call with me and say, hey, Mike, I know I was going to walk 4 times this past week. I only walked twice, right? I didn't walk the 4 times. And there's so much focus on them not hitting that goal. And initially, the most important thing is we first take a moment to acknowledge the fact that they did walk the 2 miles or the 3 miles or the 1 mile 2 times during the week. And we try to dig in and we figure out and we learn, how did that happen? And certainly we didn't hit the goal, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because we want to learn how can we do better in the future. Again, how can we learn from this? But let's take time to make sure that we're acknowledging what's working and how that worked first and foremost, right? So even the small wins, we got to in some form or fashion reinforce that we did some stuff and we did get a win in that process. Incredibly important. And number 7 is really the big focus on this call. Number 7 is probably what we all struggle with, and I call it the negative voice. That's been called the resistance, or I don't know, there's the gremlin, or there's lots of these negative voices that we hear. And what can we do to quiet or even potentially sometimes minimize or eliminate this negative voice in our heads, which really kicks up that discouragement that I was talking about earlier, right? So why do we have the negative voice in our heads? Two things. First is evolution, right? So as we evolved as human beings and we were walking on the trail and we saw the bush that was starting to shake, we wanted to make sure it wasn't a saber-toothed tiger behind that bush. And so just for our own survival, we always needed to think negatively. And right now, when we usually walk down a trail, unless you're going up the mountains in the East Coast, you want to make sure you're being extremely safe, but most of the time we're probably going to be okay. But our bodies and our minds and our brains have evolved over the course of times to go to the negative much quicker than we go to the positive. So part of it's evolution. And I believe that part of it has brought us success in the past, right? So this has been a positive reinforcer by thinking about, I've got to do good. I'm going to fail at this test. I've got to work hard. And that negative voice has definitely brought us some degree of success in the past. However, we tend to over-catastrophize and we tend to overthink the negative voice, which is a significant impact on our thoughts and our positive voice. So the influence of our inner critic, that negative voice, has significantly a greater impact than our positive voice, okay? So to minimize the negative voice, this negative voice has been a habit pattern of thought that we have developed over years and sometimes over decades. The impact and the severity of the negative voice is a well-established habit, and that's going to come up in just a minute. So how to turn the volume down, right? If we're all thinking about this, when we get on the scale and it doesn't say what we want, or we said we were going to do such and such, but we didn't do it, how can we really work to minimize that volume or even potentially eliminate it? This is actually a skill. And getting good at this skill, which is just a skill can be learned, can have significant impact to change your life for the better, right? So think about that. So there's a 3-step process to minimizing the negative voice, and that is AIS. It's the awareness of the fact that you're having the negative voice. It's interrupting the pattern of the negative voice, and then it's shifting your either mental focus or your physical body, right? So AIS, awareness, interrupting, and shifting. So awareness, and we talked about this in the last call, but what is maybe one thing that you can do to just really start building your own level of self-awareness? Metacognition, which is really your thoughts about your thoughts, recognizing that you're having thoughts versus, which basically 99% of the time we're not even thinking about our thoughts. but what can we do to, what are some things that we can do to really help us and support us to build better awareness or self-awareness of what's going on with our thoughts? What do you think?
Journaling.
Okay. And I agree 100%. So tell me, Christina, how journaling would help you to recognize your thoughts. How does that work?
Well, if you're going to bed at the end of the day and you kind of take a moment to sit back and reflect on your day and your own thoughts and your decisions, then you're kind of actively thinking about your own thoughts rather than just letting them pass by and going to sleep and starting the next day.
Yeah. And building that habit is a way with journaling, is a way then that all of a sudden, this is something you've been doing for a week. All of a sudden you've been doing it for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, when you're walking to your car, you're starting to recognize things in your regular day, you're starting to become more aware of because you're in this habit of just having that sense of perception of what's going on with your thoughts. Very good. Anything else you guys think you can do to help build your sense of awareness of what's going on with your thoughts?
Well, this is kind of piggybacking on what Christina said, but it's kind of like just letting yourself be there and be in the moment. Try not to be judgmental about it.
Yeah.
But just be aware of it.
Yeah.
Be aware of maybe what the triggers were, or be aware of why you're feeling this way, but not beat yourself up about it. Just be aware of it.
Yeah. I love that. So really being intentional about this thought of awareness, right? Because when you direct your thoughts to say, kind of what overall, I'm kind of not feeling real good. What's going on with my thoughts? And I love how you said, and it's on the screen as well, not to judge. I definitely fall down this hole a lot, or I certainly have in the past, where I'm really trying to maintain a level of positivity. And then I catch myself being negative, and then I beat myself up for it because I'm being negative. So why don't I just throw some gasoline on that fire of negativity? So it's important just to step back and just recognize mindfulness with non-judgment. What's going on? What's going on with your thoughts? What's going on with your feelings? What's going on with your emotions? How's your body feeling? Just really, truly being present, right? So number 2, after the awareness, is to interrupt the pattern, right? And so I think I've talked to some of you about this, and that is the 5-second rule. There's any number of ways that you can interrupt the pattern, but first we have to be aware of it, right? We have to catch ourselves to say, oh, wow, I'm kind of going down that pattern again, where I start thinking about X, Y, Z. Once you catch yourself and you become aware of it, you can do any number of things to interrupt that pattern. There is a 5-second rule that I want to share with you guys that's pretty powerful. So this is Mel Robbins. I don't know if you can see her on your screen, but Mel Robbins is a motivational speaker. She's got an author. She's written a few books. The 5-second rule book she wrote. I have not read it, but I probably will after doing this presentation because I did some research on her. But it's pretty phenomenal what she shares. And just anybody watching the video, just so you know, the video on the right that I'm going to show, which is about 3 minutes here, that is from a 45-minute video from the impact theory. And I'm going to share that on the description of this video as well. It's a very powerful video. But Mel Robbins has got a phenomenal story. She's very authentic. She's got a TED Talk with 32 million views, how to stop screwing yourself over. She's very real. And I love her authenticity. She gets down and dirty with what's going on with her own life and how she's had some aha moments. And she's such a great communicator that she's really been able to help and support many people with her philosophies of self-improvement and motivation. And in this clip I'm going to share with you, she has been talking on this video for a while about how she was able to change her behavior because of the 5-second rule. And then she switches to say, I wonder if I could change my thoughts with this. So let me just share this video. It's about 3 minutes, real quick here.
4 years ago, after I had been using the 5-second rule to change my behavior, how I spoke to my husband, how I negotiate in business meetings, how I conduct sales, the kind of parent that I am, my health habits, my eating habits, curbing the drinking, I thought, I wonder if I can use this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing to get control of my thought patterns, not my behavior patterns, my thought patterns. Yes, you can. So we're gonna build this conversation. So I want to start with something we can all relate to, and that is, how do you stop worrying, and how do you stop listening to self-doubt? This is how you're going to do it. So all day long, you're going to have moments where your thoughts drift, and I use that word on purpose because for me, there is a physical sensation when you start to use the 5-second rule and you start to wake up. Not only on time in the morning, but you wake up to your life and the opportunities in your life. Your thoughts drift. Like you'll just be hanging out with your friends and then suddenly you're like, I'm not sure that person likes me anymore. You know, I haven't heard from my kids lately. I wonder if they're dead, or, as I check it, like just start worrying about stuff. Why? Because it's a habit. Because when you're not paying attention, your brain shifts from you being a decision maker and paying attention to you just kind of spinning things on autopilot. And one of your habits is worrying. The second you wake up and you notice, holy cow, I'm talking some negative garbage to myself right now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You've just shifted the part of the brain that you're using. You've shifted from the basal ganglia, which is where your habit loops are spinning, and you've awakened your prefrontal cortex. You've also interrupted that pattern. Now what you're going to do, because your mind is actually ready to receive a different thought because of the counting, now you can put in an anchor thought. Like if you have a mantra, if you've got a vision about the way that your business is going to turn out in 5 years, if you just have a thought that makes you really happy and proud, insert that. Now, why does this work? It works because of the counting. And I'm not kidding. We know, based on research, that positive thinking alone, not effective. In some instances, trying to force yourself to think positive can actually make the worries worse. Why? Well, the reason why is because it's really hard to just change the channel. What we have to do first is basically interrupt it and turn off the TV, and then turn it back on with the prefrontal cortex awakened. So the counting is essential. And so you can start using this today. You catch yourself talking garbage to yourself, because we all know if I were to put a speaker on your head and broadcast, you'd not be sitting here in the audience, you'd be in an insane asylum, because the crap that you say to yourself is insane. And the problem is we listen to it. You'll be in a sales meeting and you'll be undermining yourself. They're not going to buy. Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. You're not even present. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Switch it back. Get back to that vision that you have about toasting your success, or this customer being really happy, or you being proud of yourself. Whatever that vision may be, you can control your thoughts. And this is not just us talking about it. This is a tool that you can use.
So her, again, she's phenomenal. She said, you can just kind of see it there, what a great communicator she is. But when she on the video started talking about stopping worrying and stopping self-doubts, and how your thoughts drift, I honestly thought she was speaking to me. I was like, okay, she kind of knows who I am. So, and that may resonate with you as well. But, on the screen, it has on here awareness. There's the A, right? And then she says, once you catch yourself, the interruption is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It totally focuses on a different area of your brain, and then you can shift your thoughts. The 5-second rule is a powerful tool. Be open to it, but it's so simple and so powerful, right? And so the video, of course, the full video will be on this presentation, in the description of this presentation. So she talked a little bit about this, and I call it the landing spot, and the positive focus that you want to do. So you have the awareness, you have the interruption, and then you shift your focus to something that's on your landing spot, right? So you're shifting your focus on something in your mind, and there's 3A here and there's 3B. So the first one is the mind, 3A. So having a landing spot for these things, like focusing something positive that she talked about, right? Something that brings you joy, something you're proud of. You can also think about goals or vision or purpose. A lot of times clients will say, yeah, I'm going to focus on my vision because I'm in a bad place. I caught myself, and there I'm going to focus on this. Your purpose. What are you grateful for, right? You have to be intentional with this exercise if you want to build this habit, but just know that this is one of those tools that you can use to do that. So that's 3A, to shift the focus on the mind, right? The other one that I want to share with you is shifting the focus, what's going on with your body. Shift your body. You catch yourself, you count backwards, and you get up and get a glass of water. You physically move. You walk around for a bit, right? I'm in bed and I know I want to go running this morning and I don't want to go running. I know I need to go running. If I just get up and brush my teeth and put my shoes on, I'm significantly more motivated to go running than when I was just laying in bed really warm, right? It's the same kind of thing. Just know that mood follows action. So in some form or fashion, if you could physically move your body, that can help you as well. And you can do both. You can move your mind and you can move your body, but those are two basic tools to help you and support you. So I'm going to recap. This is, I think, my second to last slide. There's a ton of information I gave you guys, but I want to recap just what I talked about in those different 7 ways to help you with minimizing or overcoming discouragement, right? And it's that, think about your own self, right? It's that letdown you've had and you've allowed yourself to go to that place emotionally. Number 1 was to watch your language. What words are you saying either out loud or in your mind? And how can you reframe those words to help and support yourself? Reframing the setback. Remember, we talked about normalizing it. How can we learn from this? How can we get what's good that could come out of this setback? Break down the goals into smaller, tiny steps to help build momentum and to build confidence. What can you do to focus on your why for support when you go through that discouragement? How can you secure support, and not only support as a lending ear, but also support to help you to move forward, right? You got to move forward when it makes sense to you, but that should be intention because the goal is for change and moving forward. Reinforcing and celebrating wins, even the small wins, to stay on the positive side of that, because we change when we feel good and not when we feel bad. It's that much more difficult, which is the premise of this whole presentation. And the last one that I talked about, of course, is minimize the negative voice, right? How can we have that awareness, catch ourselves, could be journaling, could be intentional, like Bev talked about, interrupt the pattern with something like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then shifting, right? The 5-second rule, and then shifting our focus to something that brings us joy and happiness. And I think if you catch yourself, you interrupt the pattern with something like the 5-second rule, and you shift your focus, and let's say on day 1, you do this 2 or 3 times, could you catch yourself? And then day 2, you do it 2 or 3 times. By day 3, you're going to get better at doing that because you're going to be building that habit to help and support yourself in the capacity of overcoming that discouragement. And the last thing I have for you is just the call of action, right? So we really don't have time to share today, but I would love to hear from you individually on an email. You can go to my website. You can send me a text if you'd like. But if there's something on this that resonates with you that you want to try or that you're going to try and you'd like to give me feedback on, I'd love that, right? Because these are all things I think that we potentially could use to help and support us as we're looking to work towards capacity of change. So having said that, we have just a few minutes before we got to close it out. What questions, comments, or concerns the folks on the call have? What do you guys think? Okay. Well, we will close it out. I appreciate everybody's time.